Hi guys, and welcome back to my Fursuit Bodysuit making tutorial. This is part 3, and today we're going to look at cutting and sewing the fur. So here we are continuing from last time, just laying down the pattern pieces with the fur pile direction heading in the right direction, drawing around them and cutting them out on the fur from the back with a utility knife. The same health and safety features apply. Don't cut towards yourself, don't put your hands and your fingers in the way like I am, but as I said last time, I'm a little bit stupid. I've done it all before, so I'm probably going to keep doing it until I do something horribly wrong, but please don't take my advice on that. Just do it the safe way from the start. You can see where I've drawn lines on the edges of my pattern pieces down the centre line of the DTD. With a lot of these, you can just flip the pattern piece on the fur and cut it out as one piece instead of two and then sew it together. If you're going to do that, be mindful of the fact you're going to want to put the zip either in the front or back down that centre line ideally. Some designs you can get away with putting the zip between two seams of fur down the belly or something like that. I generally just put it down the front because then the costume is easy enough to put on and take off by yourself without a helper. With all of my pieces, I'm adding my seam allowance as I go. It's normally approximately an inch. I'd like to make it a little bit more than I think I'm going to need, so that allows for a slightly bigger fit on the wearer. You can always make things smaller, but making them bigger is a complete and utter pain. I'm just remembering to switch colours of fur, or types of fur, according to the markings that I've written on the pattern pieces for the design that I'm making. I also tend to brush all of the pieces through as soon as I've cut them. Just helps get rid of all of the extra fibres that you're going to have on the edges, get rid of any tangles in the fur if there happen to be any, just makes it a little bit cleaner for the process. Don't forget to take breaks, and especially don't forget about your cup of tea while you're working, because nothing beats a good old cup of tea while you're working. Something I recommend about the storage of your fur, instead of folding it up and stacking it on top of each other, fold it with the pile going long ways and then roll it. That prevents horrible wrinkles that you can get in fur by storing it with weights on it. So, you know, folding it and putting one fur on top of the other. I have a shelving rack just for fur, which I roll up and then slide in. Try not to stack it on top of each other just to prevent any damage, because it is expensive. I'm a little bit strange, and instead of using tacking pins to pin all my work together, I essentially use bulldog clips. You can get those little clips that are designed for sewing, but I wouldn't even know what they're called, let alone where to look for them. So I just buy some binder clips or bulldog clips from a local stationery shop, and they work absolutely brilliantly at pinning the fur together without getting the wrinkles in it that you would from pins. It's just completely straight. You can push all the fur into the seams and then clip it down so they don't pop back out. I just completely love them. I think they're so much better than using pins for my pinning. Possibly a little tip for you guys. Head on over to the sewing machine. There's very little I can really tell you guys about this. Just make sure you take your clips out of the way as you're sewing, or pins, because you don't really want to break your machine like that. Everybody's machines are different, so there's probably not a lot of advice that I can give you. Just try and make sure that your tension's right and your stitch length isn't too short, because if it's too short it won't make it through the thickness of the fur. It's a complete nightmare, so trial it on some scrap pieces first and make sure you're essentially not going to break your machine. What I just showed you then was a straight stitch, which I do first to sew my pieces together, and then a zigzag stitch just the other side of that on the waist side of the seam. This stops the fur from fraying all the way down through the stitching and creating holes, but it's also a little bit of extra strength because a straight stitch isn't very strong. I would recommend, you know, a couple of lines of stitching if you can. Double stitching makes it a lot stronger. I will go over everything at the end and double stitch it all again. This is one of those awkward silences where I'm just doing the same thing for like 5 minutes. So yeah, just watch, bear in mind sort of how I'm maybe sewing the pieces together. Like I say, the machine will be completely different for each individual, so there's probably not a great deal that I can tell you. Just take your time. If you break any needles, change them straight away. Obviously, you're not going to get very far with a broken needle. Make sure you use a sort of high-end thread, heavy-duty thread or standard thread, something like that. Don't use something really cheap because they're generally a lot thinner and they'll either cause problems for your machine or snap very, very quickly. So what I've done is I have sewn all of the pieces up that I've cut out, but what I want to do is just test the fit of one of the legs. That way I can make sure that, you know, it fits before I get around to putting the whole thing together and then realising I've got to make some horrible alterations. So I head back over to the duct tape dummy, put the padding back on obviously, and try on the legs. Just going to pin as much of the fur on as I can on that side just to see how it all looks. And at this point I can take it back off and head back over to the machine to make any alterations that I may have to make. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next part. Bye bye!